everyone, it's Imogen and welcome back to Colouring Kid. I hope you're all doing well. This is the first time I'm doing a voice recording on top of a video, so please excuse me. But I'm really excited today to show you how I use acrylic markers in my colouring books. And I'm also going to be alongside that reviewing some Tooli-Art paint markers, which Tooli-Art have very kindly sent me to review. As you can see from what I'm swatching now, I was given the Earth set, which is a 36 set of varying colours, which kind of acts as a rainbow palette but a more muted version, which I really enjoyed, and also a pastel set. And I often lean more towards pastel colours anyway, but having those muted colours in the earth tones to complement them really was a lovely collection of colours. So the pastel set was a 24 set. So these are just really my first impressions. I will talk more in depth about them later on in the video, but I was very impressed with how they laid down. I didn't have many issues with having to pump them several times. I kind of just had to pump them a little bit and then they were working really well. And yeah, I love the colour selection, and these little swatch cards that I've made will just fit really nicely into the packs. I should say, obviously, these aren't the only colours that they do. They have many, many other sets, and I will link the specific ones that I bought down below. But yeah, I just think from first impressions they are really great pens, and later on in this video I will be showing some examples of things that I've done and generally other acrylic marker work that I've done in the past, and then comparing them to my other brands, and then also using them in real time on a page and seeing how they work on top of pencils. So there's a multitude of ways I use acrylic paint markers, and I'm so excited to have these in my collection because I really do think that they are top quality and one of the best competitors in the market. So that's everything for now, and we will get on with the rest of the video. So this is a new day. You've seen me swatch the markers and hear a little bit about my first impressions, hopefully on a voiceover over that. But my first impressions are that these are really brilliant paint pens. I have thoroughly enjoyed using them so far. I thought what I would do now is just briefly show you something that I've been working on with them exclusively, and then compare them to the other acrylic markers that I've tried in the past so that you can see how they perform. So the other day I was playing around on an Airy postcard and I did this. So this was just with, I think, about 5 different paint pens. And it was a mixture of the ones from the earth tones and the pastels, but I just wanted to see how they would layer over each other, how quickly they would dry. And, you know, I'm by no means experienced with exclusively using acrylic paint pens on their own. Normally, they would just be for embellishments and extra add-on things at the end, which is something that I'm going to show you next. But I really, really enjoyed how they worked. My mum was watching me do it, and she said that she can totally see why people really enjoy using acrylic paint pens as a quicker, more effective way of getting a page done quickly, also covering up lines, of course, as well. And yeah, I really thought that they performed well, and I like the result. So whether I finish this, I don't know, but I just wanted to do the centre girl herself so you can see something small finished. And I know I have a lot of work to do in terms of shading and placement, and I haven't tried the method which I know some people use where you can scribble them onto a palette and paint with them, or get a water brush or a paintbrush of some sort and blend them together whilst they're on the page. That's definitely something that I could explore in the future, but for their core use, what I will be using them for, mostly for embellishing and maybe occasionally doing basing with them and then going over with pencil or other acrylic paint pens and gel pens and things like that. I thought they worked really well. They're nice and smooth as well. So I would like to compare these pens. So the ones I've tried in the past are Posca pens. I'm sure this won't come as too much of a surprise. When I first started using acrylic paint pens, these were the ones that I bought. I had an 8 set of pastel ones, which is where this one's from, this light pink. And then I had a thicker nibbed glitter set. And then I just didn't really, I got them as presents and I used them a lot at the time. And then I didn't really use them a lot because I didn't really know how I could incorporate them into my pages. Then I found the white Posca pen and the thicker, you know, ivory tipped Posca and the beige and the black and certain ones that I knew would be more useful to me. But I picked these up a few years ago again. I think I must have got these at least 5 years ago now, but a few years ago I was like, oh, I should really carry on using these. The main issue I had was them pooling a lot on the paper, and you'll see what I mean in a second, but they just didn't really work for me, and it kind of put me off paint pens for a while, which was unfortunate because I just thought all paint pens would work like this, and that's just my experience with them. But you know, it's not like that for everyone. Some people really enjoy using the Poscas. These are the thin tipped ones, so like I will show, they are the really teeny tiny ones, and so I get along better with the slightly thicker ones. Then I have tried before these acrylic paint markers, which I believe were from Graby. I loved these. I got them for a review many years ago, and they're still working, still lasting with me, and I think that they're brilliant. I love the tips. As you can see, they've been well loved, well used. I don't even know, I think some of them are in this little pouch that I take with me to university. So I keep a few Poscas, a few gel pens, a few brush pens and things like that. And I've got a lot of the acrylic paint markers still in there, a lot of the pastel ones, which I tend to use more. So these are the ones that have kind of been left behind because I don't use the darker colours quite as often. Then, and forgive me, this has been quite a few years now and I can't remember who these were from, but these are brush pens. Now I have seen the brush pens from Artex, you know, floating around, and the sole reason that I haven't wanted to try them, I love the colour ranges, don't get me wrong, it's just the fact that a brush pen doesn't really work for me, particularly because I'm not covering large areas when I do acrylic paint marker work. It's always tiny embellishments, and I just find I don't get the opacity that I need if I'm wanting to do a tiny embellishment with these on the point. They are quite flexible nibs, not as flexible as some other just general brush pens that I've used, but they do hold their shape pretty well. And then finally we have the TooliArt ones. So these are literally the same nib. I'm going to take these off so you can see, as the Graby. And I really hope this will stay in focus so that you can see. Can you see there? So they're 0.7 nibs, but then if you tilt them to the side, you're able to get some good results. So before I show you how they work compared to each other, I'm just going to briefly show you the colour palettes so you can see the difference and how amazing the TooliArt ones are. So these are the Graby ones. As you can see, not many pastels. I do really like these beige colours in particular. They were a lovely added muted bonus to that set. Then we have the brush tip, so these ones, lovely selection of muted colours. I really do love those, and I like some of the dark editions of the colours as well. And then, like I've shown, we have the pastels and the earth tones for the TooliArt, and I couldn't be happier with the colour ranges for these. I think they're absolutely gorgeous, and there is a tiny bit of crossover with some colours that I think are pretty similar across the sets, but none of them are completely the same, and I think that's amazing. And considering how many sets there are out there from TooliArt, I think it would be interesting to compare all of them and see if there are many colours that overlap or if each colour is completely unique. But yeah, I'm so super chuffed with the colour palettes for these sets. So let's just move the boxes slightly so that I can show you the pens. So we're going to start with the Posca. Now I already shook this earlier, so it should be okay, but you can kind of see it's just starting to pull there. These do go down pretty smoothly when they've been shaken, but I am always concerned about them pulling, and you can see that they're very old, so it's not really a fair comparison, but can you see that wall of the pooling? So that's a shame. I mean, I won't carry on buying them. This is why we're doing the comparison, so that I can show you what hasn't necessarily worked as well for me in the past. Then we have the Graby. Again, I think I did shake this earlier. And these work really well. Now these are a plastic tip, and I believe the tips on the Tooli-Arts are also plastic as well. Well, they've got a particular name and I can't quite remember. But yeah, I believe they are plastic. And they are really lovely. The thing I like about these are if you vary the pressure, you can get different thicknesses with these. Again, these are very old, so I am amazed that they are still holding up, to be honest with you. Then we have the brush tip. That's been a while since I've used these, so we'll see. See, that's quite watery because I haven't used it. I don't think shaking it will particularly help. But I just find that they don't have the same opacity whatsoever. And that probably is because I've not necessarily been storing them correctly. I'm just going to try one more, just that they don't have an unfair advantage, but that's a bit better. Okay. That pink. So you can see you are able to get amazing thickness. But like me, if that's not something you want, then they're probably not for you. But the brush tip sets from Artex that I've seen are amazing. I just personally prefer fine tip. And then finally, let's look at the Tooli-Art. So I showed this a lot, only about 20 minutes ago. It's not pooling. You can see it's already been well used. I have definitely used this quite a lot. And, you know, you can occasionally clean the tips. But that's pretty good, I think. They write very smoothly. It's like writing with a normal pen almost. I'm not as concerned with these about pooling happening. And if I do push down slightly, I don't get a massive amount of paint coming out, which is nice. I'm sure if I did it a lot, then it would, but they just feel really nice. Really good. And obviously you are going to get to a point with any acrylic paint marker where you need to reshake it because they're not going to have the same opacity after a while. Just like a fountain pen, you're going to run out of ink. So there will come a point, and I can kind of potentially could see that it would start to happen soon where I would need to reshake it, but I think that's pretty good going. There was one that I tried, I can't remember which set it was from, but I think it was one that was just slightly pooling a bit more than the others. But I have, you know, I've swatched all of them, didn't have any issues when I was swatching, and it's only been the one that I've come across so far, which has just done it ever so slightly, and it just meant that I couldn't get as fine a line as I wanted to. It was just a little bit of a thicker line. But as you can see with these, you also have the flexibility to get a really thin 0.7mm line or a really thick line there. So you could easily, you know, attempt to do what I've done with the calligraphy here, or just, you know, if the pressure doesn't always work, you can always go in and just add some thicker lines in, because they are plastic nibs. They're not very flexible when it comes to wanting to do varying thickness of line. But they are all the pens just to compare and contrast. I definitely think in terms of smoothness, the Tooli-Art are the best, closely followed by the Grey Bee fine tip. I've heard people say many good things about those pens as well. I just think they're a little bit harder to get hold of because I don't think you can get them on Amazon anymore. I could be wrong, don't quote me on that, but they're not as readily available, and Tooli-Art are kind of the ones that I've heard so much about over the past few years since people have been using them. And now, you know, the Artex are also very popular, so it does just depend what you want. Because with the Tooli-Arts, the brilliant bit about it is you are building your setup and you don't have to spend lots on a massive set of 120, and you can get the new unique colours like I've shown in the smaller sets. Because normally, especially with pencil sets and well, any medium really, you have to buy bigger in order to get the muted, interesting shades and different colours. Whereas with this, the beauty is that you can choose your set and tailor it to the types of colours that you're wanting to get. You don't have to spend money getting, I mean, I know with the Holbeins, for example, you can get the 50 pastels separately. But for Prismacolors, for example, you don't have to get the whole set to get, you have to get the whole set to get the really interesting colours. So I think the way that they've gone about marketing these is really clever, and I like that each pack has its own, you know, value in different interesting colours, and there's clearly been thought behind that. I'm really interested in a few of the other, I think there's a southern set that looks really cool and a wildflower set, and then they do the colour by colour packs as well, the 22 packs of different colours. And then I'd love to try their white out, but I don't think you can buy it individually. I think you have to buy a set of 11 black and 11 white, but these don't come with a white, but considering how they've performed, I don't doubt that the white marker would be excellent. So I'm just going to show you a few pages in the past where I've used acrylic markers, and yeah, just show you how I like to use them, and then we'll get on to using the Tooli-Art markers in real time. So I've just got a handful of books to share with you. We've got Minorizer Dash Africa by Rita Berman, and the page that I did in here, you can see that I just used them really minimally. I took a purple and outlined some areas just to make them pop, and also so that the black lines weren't as harsh. So you can see I've done it again here to make it look like there are slight droplets. And then inside those circles, I've put glittery paint. So that's just a way of eliminating some of the black lines, making everything blend into each other a bit more, but also making really tiny elements pop. With Mythic World by Kirby Rozans, you can see all of the cloud work that I did here. So this was all the white acrylic marker. Because the lines were slightly thicker, I didn't want to use a white gel pen because I wasn't going to get quite the same thickness of line that I wanted. The good thing about acrylic markers I found is that you can get the opacity that you want. A lot of the stuff you'll be seeing is white acrylic paint pen, as well as the Graby ones. They were the ones that I tended to use quite a lot in the past, and obviously we're now going to be using the Tooli-Art ones in a picture in real time. So yeah, a lot of this was white work on those clouds. Similarly with Worlds Within Worlds, I did use white gel pen and white acrylic paint marker for these clouds. They work really well in conjunction with each other. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that a white gel pen is essentially some kind of formulation of acrylic paint in a pen. I could be wrong, but that's what it feels like when I'm using them anyway. I think this was an Arteza white gel pen with some acrylic paint pen for thicker lines. So that was nice and opaque. Then we have the Fairy Tale book by Eri. I have a couple in here that I have done, and I was thinking of both of these specifically for different reasons, I think. So this one, again, all the white gel pen work, lots of little dots, lots of thick lines. This was Arteza white gel pen and some of the paint marker as well for the pointillism. This one I don't particularly like, but it's a really good example of where I've used acrylic paint pen a lot, and this is just something that the brush pens would not allow you to do. You can see I've outlined pretty much everything apart from the chicks in a paint marker, and I think I was wanting to try them out, so I tested them on this page. So yeah, I really enjoyed using them. No skipping, really good thinness of line. I thought they worked brilliantly, and you can see I've used them in areas with no shading, and they look really matte and opaque. So very chuffed with that. Frozen Fantasies, the one I did in here was quite similar to the clouds, but it was very much using them to white out and add interest to all of the icicle sections, all of the background here. The background here was definitely gel pen. All down here to create that snowy effect. I'm not sure if you can see properly, but that was all paint pen. I would not have been able to achieve that with gel pen by any means, and I then went over with some fine liner. In I Believe in Fairies by Clara Markova, there was one in particular I wanted to show you. It was this one, the hat technique. So I coloured it with a bit of blue and soft purple, and then I went over with a white acrylic paint marker, kind of in a scribbly motion, lots of flicking motion, to do the pom-poms and the fairy bit of the hat. really enjoyed doing that. That's a very cool effect. And then Little Secrets from My Fairy House was kind of a failed attempt at using acrylic paint marker, but I thought I would share it with you anyway. So quite a lot of white going on. The thing that's really bold on this page, which I mentioned is the only thing that I'm not overly thrilled with, is this carpet. But it does show a technique that I have tried out and does work, which is putting a base layer of paint pen. In fact, it was this one, the Uni Posca, and this was before I had any of the other paint pens, I think. Putting a base of paint marker down and then going over with pencil. So you can see I've got a shading over the top of that. And whilst it is a tiny bit streaky, I thought it actually worked pretty well. And that's something that I'll definitely be testing again at some point with the Tooli-Art. I really would like to see how they perform, and if they, I don't imagine they'll be very streaky, potentially in large areas, but for smaller areas, I'd love to see how they work with pencil over them. I think softer pencils are the best way to go. You don't want to risk scratching any of your paint off with harder pencils, but I'm sure in a completed pages video I will show that if I do end up trying that technique out. But they are the pages I have to show you, and I'm going to be moving on to a current work in progress that I have, and working in that with some of the Tooli-Art pens and seeing how they perform. In particular, the most crucial thing is how they perform over pencil, because sometimes acrylic paint markers don't react particularly well over pencil because it can be quite a slippery surface, and I have found that I don't quite get the opacity and the results that I want sometimes, depending on the pencil. So we will talk about that, and you'll see my first impressions when I'm using them on that page. Okay, so the book I'm going to be working in is Vintage My Room, and this is by Chunso. I'm going to be talking about this book more when I do my haul from April to June, but I have a current whip in here at the moment, which I've been working on for about 2 months now. I started it before uni and I still haven't finished it, but I'm thoroughly enjoying it. Every single part of this page that I've coloured, I've been really loving. It's just been a great mindless thing, even if it's just a tiny star. Every day when I've been at uni, it's really nice to work on. So obviously, with it being a work in progress, there's not too much I can add to it in the way of embellishment so far, but I am going to go in with some of these stars and use some yellow acrylic paint pens. Now, obviously, where all of these stars are, I've coloured, and you might be able to see I attempted to use one here, and it went so badly wrong. I think I tried a yellow Posca and it just was not opaque at all, and I didn't have anything else appropriate to use. So I'm really, really excited to have these now to be able to test out on here. Now I've got 2 possible colours. These are 22 and 23 from the pastel set. Now, I'm not quite sure yet which one is going to be the best until we actually just give it a go. And if it goes horribly wrong, I can just wait until they're dry and then attempt to scratch it off. But I'm going to go in with the lighter one. I would always recommend just drawing a tiny bit on a scrap piece of paper before you actually get into doing it on your page. I'm just going to move in slightly. Hope you can see that okay. Let's give these a go and see how opaque they are on first try. Bearing in mind this is over pencil as well, so I'm not expecting as good results as if we are, you know, just doing these straight on the page. See, I have had to kind of layer that, but I think that's pretty good. We'll see what happens when it dries. I can tell that when it's starting to dry there, it's not quite as opaque. I am just going to go in now and try the darker yellow, but I'm quite liking how that's looking, and I think I'll be able to tell immediately which one I prefer. So this one isn't quite as opaque, but that's okay. Bearing in mind these are still new and I probably am just not shaking them enough either. I actually like both of those, and I'm leaning more towards this darker one, because I think it's more similar in colour to what I've already got going on, and I think that's going to work quite well. So let's carry on going with these. Can you see there, I've just given that a little shake. Oh, I've got it and zoomed in. You can see there's just a little bit of paint around that, but that's not to worry. That's better. Oh, I'm really chuffed with that. That's worked really well first try. I haven't needed to go over that twice at all. I'm going to wait for this one to dry. Oops, I've just marked that up now. I'll just wait for that one to dry, and then I will go back over it with the darker colour. And I'm going to try on this one that, sorry, you can't see what I'm doing. That's not very helpful, is it? I'm going to try on the star that went wrong over here and see if we can get a better result with this. So much better immediately. Wow. It's covered up my mistake, which had been annoying me on this picture, I have to say. Brilliant. Okay, very happy with that. The great thing about these is you can just go in and start touching things up pretty quickly. I mean, I've just gone over that star that wasn't looking quite right. So over pencil, I'd say you're fine. Just for reference as well, I used Holbein's, so fairly soft, but also quite slippery, I think. I think it would be the same if you were using Prismacolor. I imagine you'd get a similar result. Now, obviously, I don't quite know what this is all going to look like when it's finished, but I'm quite liking that colour because I've used a similar yellow in places elsewhere on this picture. But yeah, I think they are really nice on here, and I don't need to worry about actually putting them down as a base layer because the paper's nice and smooth, and I've really tested them on paper as well, on their own on the ACRYLIC page. So combining this, trying them out over pencil and using them on their own, I'm really pleased with how these work. And yeah, that kind of concludes the video really. I know I've basically hopefully given a fairly comprehensive review of these, showing the swatches, comparing them to other pens that I already have, how I then use acrylic paint markers in my colouring books for various things, both for basing in some cases and also as embellishments, and then using them a little bit in real time. And I'm really pleased, and I can't wait to use these more on this page, and maybe do a little bit more of this if I am inclined to do so. But thank you so much all for watching. Thank you very much to Tooli-Art for sending me these pens to review. I really appreciate it, and I'm so chuffed that I now have some usable acrylic paint markers in my collection which actually have really unique colours, because that's something that I was definitely lacking. And it's another thing that I can use to embellish my pages, which is really exciting. You know me, I'm quite a muted colourist anyway, so being able to have that flexibility with another medium is really lovely. But yeah, thank you again, Tooli-Art, and if you have any questions, please let me know down below. Acrylic markers is still very much a newer thing to me, but I have worked with acrylic paint quite a lot in the past, and I am adjusting to them and really enjoy using them for embellishing. So yeah, thank you so much. Everything will be down below as usual, and take care, and I will see you all in my next video. Bye everyone.